To continue with access control and the role of an auditor in ensuring that the access control systems are set up correctly, we've seen that there's 4 distinct steps within the access control, should we say, life cycle. The initial is the identification of the various entities that are trying to get onto our systems, the users and processes. Then we looked at authentication to validate those identities. Then we looked at, of course, authorization. What are the rights or privileges we give a person now that we have proven they are an authenticated user? The 4th and final step in this is called auditing, or sometimes you'll see it written as accounting. This is where we see then, of course, a recording of all of the activity on the system. The important thing here, of course, is that this is why we needed unique user IDs, so we can associate the activity on the system with the user ID that actually then executed that task. This is done through logging, tracking, and keeping a record of all of the actions on the system, both those which are legitimate and those, of course, which are errors or even unauthorized operations. It is important that in order to ensure compliance and in order to ensure that we are then meeting the requirements of policy, we're able to associate all activity on the system with the user ID that actually then enacted that process. These logs that we generate need to be protected. Quite often we're going to need them if we're going to do an investigation, or even more seriously, if we're getting into a situation that requires forensics and examination of evidence in relation to a criminal case. The other thing is the logs quite often will contain sensitive information. A person may have put a password into a user ID slot, or they may contain information regarding errors or other problems that certainly should not be disclosed to unauthorized personnel. So therefore, these logs must be protected so that they are available when needed. The other thing is attackers will often try to delete entries in logs. They can do this through 2 ways. 1, directly deleting the entry itself, or 2, by flooding the log so their actions maybe get overwritten if the log is only a certain size before it starts to recycle. The idea here is to try to ensure that our logs are protected so no one is going to be able then to cover their tracks or hide their activity. Our logs should be time-stamped, and it's important, especially in today's world where we're correlating information from many logs together into, say, for example, a security information and event management system, is that the timestamps on these logs are identical. If we're bringing actions in and events in from many logs, and those logs might be out by only a moment or 2, then we could see that it could be very difficult to correlate activities across multiple systems. We should review logs on a regular basis, so we're able to detect any form of unauthorized behavior or some type of suspicious activity. It could well be that by looking at a log, we're actually able to see the precursors or the events that are leading up to an attack, where we can see that somebody is feeling their way around or examining or trying to probe our network. This could help us to identify a potential attack even before it happens. So audit log management includes things such as, well, for one, very often the problem is that our logs contain too much information. Now, too much, not because it's too much information, but because it's too much for us to be able to process or handle. We need that information that's in the log, so we don't want to disable the logs, but we do need an ability to filter or reduce then the amount of data we're looking at, so hopefully we can focus in on those few areas that are most important. Quite often we'll compare the results and logs from one reporting period to another. We can develop then trends and be able to detect variances where, for example, there's been a growing type of problem or there's been a rapid change in the types of activity in the logs from that one reporting period to another. we often look for patterns of activity that are associated with known attacks. We often call these attack signatures. We see that many of the hackers that are out there actually will deploy then a similar modus operandi or method of operation. So we can quite often be able to detect and notice some type of activity as a similar activity to, say, other attacks that have gone on and so on. A lot of our ability today to manage log data effectively has come down to the development of SIEMs, security information and event management systems. A SIEM will take data from many different locations, bring it together and correlate it so we can generate some type of reports. We can alert the users if there is something suspicious, something that needs to be acted on. This correlation means that we have to bring the data that may come from different sources and even in different formats. In order to do the correlation, we need to be able to do normalization to bring the data into a similar format and structure. The faster the system can do the analysis, the more we're going to be able to provide then real-time notification of an attack that's actually ongoing at the time. And the secret to this is that ability to get the big picture, gathering data from many different sources together so that we're able to see then those patterns, trends, variances, and the important information that could alert us to some type of problem on our system. But the problem is that very often we have too many logs. We have logs that have been generated from many different places, and the generation of these logs costs us in memory, but also costs us in performance, in that our systems are then taking that much of our extra resources just to log something. Now, there also, of course, is the cost of a tool. We looked a moment ago at a security information event management system. These can very often run into the hundreds of thousands of dollars per year in maintenance and licensing fees for them. There's a significant cost that comes through being able to do proper analysis of our log data. So this overwhelming amount of data quite often means we have to choose specific logs that we can then monitor. We can't look at everything every day. So we do the same as we do when you go to the doctor. He checks certain vital statistics, check the things that are most important that could be an indication of other problems and maybe then necessitating a more in-depth review. This takes time. Quite often, good log analysis can take a tremendous amount of determination, patience, and skill. So our administrators need to be able to learn how to then process this log data effectively and come out then with some meaningful results.